Hello again. All right. Well, I had a fair amount of questions on hamsters and their care. Many of you wrote asking about a pair of hamsters that you had just gotten and how best to house them and care for them. Well, my first question to the vast majority of you are going to be, that pair of hamsters that you got, were they Syrian hamsters? Were they dwarf hamsters? A Syrian hamster is the vast majority of the larger hamsters that you're going to see in some place like a pet store, where you'll see the wonderful teddy bear hamsters or bigger hamsters like that. They're absolutely adorable, but they cannot be housed together. In a pet store, you oftentimes see things such as the teddy bear hamster or the panda bear hamsters in the little tanks that they have there, and they're all together, and you see them all cuddled in a corner. And that's when often people say, oh, they're so cute, and you have to get them. So you want them to have a playmate and a friend, so you grab two. Pet store employees are not necessarily the brightest bunch. There are certain ones that do know what they're talking about, but those are few and far between, and good luck trying to find a knowledgeable employee when you need one. Well, when you see a Syrian hamster and with another Syrian hamster, they probably are siblings. They grew up together, yes, but they aren't at the right age where you're going to see their dominance taking over. So when you see them in a pet store together, it's simply because the pet store knows that when they're young and they grew up together, they can live together for a short time. Since most hamsters are in a pet store for a short time, this is great. It works well for them. You, however, as the consumer, the person that's actually buying them, don't know that that's not okay for their entire lifespan. Once a Syrian hamster hits puberty, which isn't too long, I'm sure, after you purchase that hamster, they do become very territorial animals and they will attack one another. Many, many people find one morning when they wake up and they come downstairs or wherever their hamsters are and they just can't wait to see them in the morning to say hi. I won't get vulgar and I won't get graphic, but I will say that what they come to see is not a pretty sight. You cannot house two Syrian hamsters together and expect them to get along when they get older. They do need to be separated. In the wilds, they are not together. It is not natural for them to be together. And then I'm asked, well, how do they mate if they don't like each other? It's a very quick process. The male mates with the female, and off he goes. He does not stick around to raise the young. The mother will raise them until they reach a certain age when they just leave her. She doesn't get all excited and want them to stick at home and be with her forever. She wants them to go too. When it's a first litter, lots of times the mother, especially if she's a young mother, will eat her young. They don't like to live together, and they're not the best parents, but you really can't keep them together. That's the bottom line. So if you did get two Syrian hamsters, they need to be separated immediately. Completely different cages without them being able to touch if you put the cages next to each other. If you got dwarf hamsters, they do okay in pairs. They do. They tend to thrive at times in pairs. The only exception to this is a Chinese dwarf hamster. They're absolutely adorable. They're about yay big, and they can hug your pinky. They're so cute. They can do okay in pairs, but they're one of the very few exceptions to the rule for dwarf hamsters. They don't prefer to be in pairs. They're just fine on their own. You don't need to worry about them. As for caging and housing options, when you're talking a Syrian hamster, it's a larger hamster. You can put them in those really nice little cute cages with all the tubes and the tunnels and the whatnots. Please make sure there's ample ventilation. That means wire cages are great when they can breathe out and the air can go wherever it needs to go so that they're not sitting in the smell of their own you-know-what. That's the best kind of cage to get. The bigger, the better. The more bang for your buck is going to be a nice giant cage that maybe you can get on sale at Craigslist or somewhere like that, eBay perhaps. You want to purchase the biggest cage possible for your animal with your financial situation. As for a dwarf hamster, lots of times those cute little tunnels and wonderful little bars, they can cutely come right out of. So not the best options. You want something that's going to be either the bar spacing is so ridiculously small that they're not going to be able to even stick their nose out of it. Not usually something you can find in a pet store. It's usually a specialty make. So in that case, and it's the only time I'll ever say this, a tank, oh, I know, do not flame me for that, but a tank is a decent option for a dwarf hamster for this reason. Tanks do not provide a lot of ventilation, and I'm talking, I would prefer a 20-gallon if you can get it. That's a nice, long-sized, relatively good-sized tank. You do not have good air ventilation in a tank. It's just, even with a nice mesh lid on there, with a weight on it, because they can pop the wire mesh lid off, even with that, you're going to need constant cage cleanings. I'm talking every 2 to 3 days you're going to want to clean that out, because the ammonia buildup can harm them, and that's why most of the time they're going to say no tanks ever. I prefer a tank with the dwarfs because you can get those wonderful tank toppers that actually extend the cage up and provide for more ventilation. Be wary of some of the cages that do have those wonderful little plastic gadgets and gizmos that are so cool, the lookout towers and all those neat things. Hamsters can be quite smart. They can figure out how to get out of these things. So watch them carefully, play with it yourself, make sure that it's not easy to detach something so that they don't get away on you. That's about it for the cages. Make sure, like I said, the bigger the better. The more you can purchase with the money you have, go ahead and do so. Bedding, Carefresh is great. It's a little dusty. That's okay. You can use Carefresh. You can also use Aspen. I really wouldn't use another type of bedding for them at all. Pine and cedar, absolutely, positively can't use, simply because of the chemicals and the oils in it that are going to harm their liver and respiratory tracts, okay? Stay away from pine and cedar. They're terrible. Anything scented you want to stay away from, simply because if we can smell it, they can smell it so much more than we can. Fleece for hamster, not really the best option. They chew right through it, and it ends up being more of a mess than it's worth to be bedding. So just really stick with the Carefresh. I think that's actually the best option for you. Or any other kind of recycled bedding that you have. Corn cob, never a good option, regardless of what others might say. It does mold pretty fast. Sometimes when ingested, it can actually harm the system. So stay away from corn cob as well. Toys, they do need chew toys. Please stay away from anything that says Snack Shack on it. Always read your ingredients in your label. If it says pine, stay away from it. It's the same with bedding. Pine and cedar are absolute no-nos. They absolutely are adorable, yes. All those cute little Snack Shacks, they have little logs and little couches. They're just terrible because as soon as they bite them and nibble on them, and then it's pine dust all over the place. It's just not the best thing. Try to stick with untreated woods. They also have little apple stick branches or peach tree branches or things like that. Those are great. They also have cute little wooden toys all over the place that you can find for your pet. Please provide them with fresh vegetables, maybe 2 to 3 times a week. Do not go overboard on them. Stay away from iceberg lettuce or celery. There's almost no nutritional value in them whatsoever. Seed mixes, they're a problem. Try to stay away from seed mixes. I don't mind ecotrition. I think that one's okay. I do prefer lab blocks for hamsters, unless they're really, really tiny Chinese dwarf hamsters that don't do so well on lab blocks. Missouri is a great brand for them, so I would definitely stick with that. You can find Missouri, I know, at PetSmart. That's about it. So if you have any other questions regarding your hamsters or their care, please feel free to let me know and I'll be happy to answer them.